And so that was our fundamental push, and we wanted to then punish the legislature for the harm that they've been causing. But our primary target was President Obama. I guess I would sum up, just on a very basic level, the strategies as one, we were trying to unite all who can be united. Two, we wanted to flip the script. And three, we wanted to not comply. And so I'm just going to give you all a very basic sense of what that actually looked like. Am I still going too fast?
It's yeah, just a little slow, but otherwise cool.
Okay, so unite all who can be united. So the Barrio Defense Committees, essentially it was building a base. So anybody who organizes here, building a base. But what this was, it essentially, the idea was that we weren't trying to build one membership base, but we were trying to build small committees in neighborhoods. So there was a so it was all in the Phoenix metropolitan area, which is very large, sprawl, typical West Coast city. There was a North Committee, North Phoenix, South Phoenix, West Phoenix, East Side. And in those, there would be weekly meetings, and then every Monday there would be almost like a spokes meeting, where the idea was that people would come, get information, get updated, take that back. As I started to kind of feel it out a little bit more, it actually seemed even more brilliant, because the fact of the matter is that people are not even traveling anymore. Undocumented folks are not, you going to work and going to school and running your basic errands is a risk. And anything more than that is a risk you're probably not willing to take. And so having these meetings very close to your house where you didn't have to drive and you could probably walk was the only viable thing to do. We were able to form a committee of lawyers who agreed to support the committee. So at each meeting, there would be lawyers present so that people could come and bring questions of what does this mean? I have this particular situation, etc., etc. That continues. Second, we tried to form a statewide coalition in which we were trying to coordinate with Phoenix, well obviously we're in Phoenix, Flagstaff, Nogales, and Tucson, primarily. Ideally that would spread to other parts of the state. We did a tactic that actually came from something that we saw years ago during the Matt Gonzalez for Mayor campaign. So we did 30 Days for Human Rights, in which we tried to recruit a broad and diverse array of organizations to hold events for human rights. So it was you know, the first one we had was on the anniversary of Stonewall. So it was the LGBTQ community coming out for human rights. And it went on and on. So we had artists, we had drumming circles, we had cop watch trainings, we had concerts, we had a children's march. Okay. So we did that. Second, the messaging. We were trying to really connect to the civil rights struggle and the affirmation of nonviolent resistance, challenging the notion of illegality. The rhetoric in the state of Arizona has gotten to such a point where, you know, a person who is undocumented is equivalent to someone who's trespassing in your home, which the underlying thing is that they should be shot, right? And so we were trying to challenge the notion of documentation and trying to challenge the notion of status. I think the second thing was elevating the stories of people affected. I think a good example is the Domestic Workers Alliance held a hearing in Congress where women and children from Arizona came to testify. Silvia Rodriguez was one of them, a young girl by the name of Catherine, who both of her parents were detained. She told her story as a child. And then third was a woman who, during a raid, had her jaw broken by ICE agents, and she was held in captivity with her jaw broken for months. There was not a dry eye in the house that day. And then third was the non-compliance piece, which was to create the political pressure that we wanted that judge, because there's a judge. Let's be honest here, that judges in these kinds of cases do not rule just on the strict reading of the law. They're going to base it off of politics and what their assessment is of how to play it, right? And so we wanted to create a situation where that judge thought twice and everybody around thought twice. If we pass this law, who knows what's going to jump off of here and anywhere else. And we wanted to make that very clear to them. And so there was all these activities that you saw here. I'm over time, but I'll just sum up in saying that the lessons, I think that you know, for many years now, the fate of so many people has been in the hands of Washington, D.C., and political winds that oftentimes sway not by the needs and wants and desires and what's right and what's wrong. It's by who's going to get what out of what. And for many of our local organizations across the country, who many of our membership, right, are affected by this. And all the time it was, you had to hinge your hopes on something that was so far away from you. And there was very little you could do other than show up for marches every once in a while. And what Arizona, I think, presents is that there's a different type of epicenter that's emerged. And for the people of Arizona, I think one of the greatest civil and human rights issues of our time has landed on the doorstep of Arizona. And it's precisely what people do about it there and in other places that will determine the fate of our communities for generations to come, not Washington, D.C. And what we have here is an opportunity to pave that path and not place our hopes solely in who's sitting in that seat and who's sitting in that house. And so for all of the good organizing talk we do of theories, concepts, you know, this and that at the center and that, like, this is the time when we have our opportunity to put that in practice.
The Catalyst Project, and thank you so much for what you were just saying. That actually was like your wrap up was kind of going to be part of like what I was going to say at the beginning, just around the idea that what's happening in Arizona is a moment for our movements, and it's an opportunity to step up and an opportunity to shift the debate from one of militarization and criminalization and massive expanse of police power towards a debate that is around human rights and human dignity, with immigrant rights and immigrant humanity at the center of that conversation. And what we've seen happening throughout the country, as you saw like in some of the images in the movie, was that it's really reinvigorating a grassroots immigrant rights movement across the country. And so thinking about all of this, Catalyst was inspired to do what we can to help to reach white people in particular and mobilize white folks to stand on the side of justice and to stand with this working class immigrant-led struggle. And so to get into some of the concrete ways of, I'll get into some of the concrete ways of like how we did that and how we wanted to, what we did in Arizona. So there was all of this motion, all of this in motion, all this movement, and there was also a specific call to action put out by Puente. And also Catalyst has relationships with folks on the ground in Arizona. So it helped us to, in having those relationships, really feel like this was a strategic and meaningful way that we could like impact work there. And what that looked like in practice was in May and leading up to the March for Human Rights that happened on May 29th. We sent down an organizer for a week ahead of time to help build up momentum for that march. And then also locally, we helped to recruit and organize a contingency of 20 folks that went down from the Bay Area to support the March for Human Rights. And then in July, we sent down 3 organizers for the 3 weeks leading up to the National Day of Noncompliance on July 29th. And we also did work to recruit folks from Ruckus, as well as folks from local and national networks to come for various lengths of time. And so, you know, there's been people that have come through Catalyst programs and community, living there for the past 6 months working, as well as folks that have come for like several months at a time and several weeks at a time.